The recording. I would now like to pass the mic over to Ken Drachnik, Director of Product Marketing for Sauce Labs.
Great. Hey, thanks so much. And everyone, welcome to today's webinar on Shifting Left with Sauce Analytics. We have a great speaker today with us. Will Harrison from our partner Omni Sourcing has a wealth of experience in the enterprise, both developing apps and providing testing and consulting services. And today he's going to be talking to us about what every executive worries about. How do you evaluate the cost of testing and test defects? Testing is one of those areas where we have lots of data, but the cost data always seems to be missing, and it's very difficult to kind of align cost data with defect data. And so what Omni Sourcing has developed is a fantastic integration with Sauce Labs Test Analytics that lets you view these key API costs in dashboards that they've optimized and kind of specialized for either developers, managers, or executives with specific views that provide those personas the information they need most. Good morning. Hi, my name is Ken Drachnik, and I'll be monitoring today's session. Again, the question panel, enter your questions into there, and during the webinar, we'll go through and ask some of those questions to keep it relevant. Due to privacy concerns, you're not going to see anybody else's name in the attendees panel, but rest assured, there are lots of people who have logged into the webinar this morning. And lastly, I'd like to remind everyone multiple times that we are recording today's session, so we will send out a link to the session and the slides, and we encourage you to share this with your coworkers who were not able to attend this today. If we go to the next slide, the agenda for today is pretty straightforward. We'll be talking about shifting left with Test Analytics. Omni Sourcing will then talk about their integration with Sauce Labs. The Test Analytics has its own set of APIs that allow you to extract all the data that we generate within the analytics feature, and then import that into your specific dashboards for use internally. They've got a great demo they're going to show, and then at the end we'll get to some Q&A. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Will, to start talking.
Hey, thanks, Ken. So I'm William Harrison, Managing Director for Omni Sourcing. Omni Sourcing is a IT technology firm that focuses on quality assurance. It also focuses on delivering and integrating quality throughout organizations. Also, we do integration with various products, and Sauce Labs is one of the products, and so we're going to talk about that. And so when we dive right in, people talk about shift left, and there's actually a problem when you look at shifting left. Many companies are trying to shift left with their methodologies, whether it's DevOps, CI/CD, or Agile, but they really don't address the historical problems that are plaguing their organizations, like requirement development, process management, code development, and cost of quality. Everybody wants to shift to a new methodology, but there are historical behaviors that have been plaguing the organization for many years that have never been addressed, that constantly shows up in the SDLC. And if companies don't address their underlying SDLC problems, trying to shift left will not go right. And so when you look at kind of when most people think of defects, they are usually thinking of code defects. Defects can occur anywhere throughout the SDLC process. And you see here, defects found early in the SDLC process reduces the overall cost in delivering application and improves time to market. So what does that mean? So if you find it early on in the phase of your cycle, such as requirements, that cost to fix it is cheaper. But if you find it in production, it's going to cost you way more to do that. And so oftentimes people focus on defects only in code and bugs, but then you have to drill into what is called the root cause and what's causing that defect. And when you do that, usually you will see it, find it could be requirement, it could be the actual development organization, it could even be testing. Oftentimes the tester kind of transpose the requirements. They write the test case in the wrong manner, and then when they go to test, they produce a bug. It goes back to development, and the development team usually rejects that defect and say, yeah, it's working as designed. You just didn't interpret the requirements properly. And so when we address shift left, we're doing more than just looking at moving testing to development, which is kind of the new moniker out there in the industry now, but really it's overall shifting left and driving quality throughout the overall SDLC. So when you do DevOps or CI/CD, you can do those things in an effective manner. And so as we move to the next slide, when we do shift left, what does that really does? Or what does it really do? And so it accelerates attention to quality from the inception of your software development lifecycle. It promotes inclusion of quality assurance right from the requirement phase. And then really the key point we want to drive home is this last one, is quality assurance is no longer a separate task only done post-development. It's really a continuous integrated process. Usually when people think of quality assurance, they're really thinking of pure testing, not really assuring quality of every aspect of that SDLC, from requirements development, the actual design, and all of the various components that leads all the way to when you push it into production. You can even have a bad deployment. So you can do everything properly from requirements to coding to testing, no bugs. But if that individual pushed that code to production, fat finger something, then all of that hard work get cannibalized by a deployment defect. And so when we look at here on the left, defect root causes, these KPIs here are some of the things that we've seen over the years with some of our clients. As you can see, requirements show 56% of defect root causes, and design shows 27%. What does that mean in the grand scheme of things? So if 56% of your requirements are off, then 9 times out of 10, all of the elements that you are developing or product or services, when they get to the finish line, they're wrong. And so you have to go all the way back to the beginning, get the requirements right, and propagate back through that process. When you do that, guess what you're doing? You're costing money, either in time or in vendor costs. There's so many variables that go into there. What do you get as far as benefits out of this? The key thing, you get reduction in defects, lower project costs, increased collaboration across the teams because they're going to have to be talking more, enhancing customer experience because you're pushing out a product now that is not faulty or buggy, and so they can, order or do whatever task that they need to do on your application or your mobile device. Increased time to market. That is key in today's competitive world. Most companies have a lot of competitors. The person that gets to market first with their product usually captures the customer. If you get there second, you have kind of second tier in capturing those customers. And so getting everything right from requirements all the way through production is really imperative if you want to increase your time to market. And so with that, we're going to move to the next slide.
Yeah, Will, I think this is Ken. I think your point about the enhancing customer experience is really critical. We're hearing that from a lot of our retail customers and a lot of our media customers, and also the banks as well, in that, someone will switch a bank in a heartbeat if the mobile app isn't working absolutely perfectly, because there's almost no friction to keep people from switching from one bank to another, or shopping from one store to another. So that customer digital experience has become something we hear about from execs all the time these days.
Yeah, and with the emergence of mobile devices and everything going mobile, people really have a low tolerance for a bad experience. There's various retail customers that have kind of lost a great deal of their customers during the kind of holiday season because they go to that app, they can't order what they want, and then they go into another app and they can order it, and then from there, that new company has gained a new customer for life, and then the old customer has almost lost that customer for life. So it is really key that you really drive quality throughout the process so it doesn't impact the end customer. And so when we move to the next slide, one of the things when we talk about driving quality assurance in a continuous process, we've kind of developed this formula here. It's kind of a hybrid of continuous improvement and continuous development, but it's really CI squared and CD squared. So you really need to be doing continuous improvement, continuous integration, continuous delivery, and continuous deployment all throughout your entire process. It shouldn't be done really in isolation. And so when we look at the wheelhouse on the left, CI, that's really continuous improvement. And so when you start with the number one there, track and monitor, that's where everything starts. And so as we get further into the presentation and look at our platforms and some of the KPIs, that's where everything starts. So you got to track and monitor what's happening across your SDLC, track and monitor what's happening with your development, your deployment. And from there, you can start seeing a shift in your overall dynamics. You start getting lower cost of quality, so on and so forth. So when we continue to look at the wheelhouse on track and monitor, once you define what you want to track and monitor, then you start developing your requirements around it. Now, this is actually twofold. So what I'm speaking of now is really how do you drive the process? And so you're going to develop your requirements of what do you need to change in the process. You put your plan together and how you're going to execute on that. And then you kind of design that process either in Visio, so on, or various type software platforms out there you can design process. Then you have to develop it and test it. You go through a couple different cycles, see how it works, and do you need to make tweaks? And then from there, you kind of release that process. But in that same wheelhouse, you take that same set of steps to actually developing your code. And so when you're looking at your requirements, are you doing them properly? Are you developing the plans properly, designing them properly, so on and so forth? So that continuous improvement is actually twofold in that wheelhouse. When you look over to the left, it's more designed for the continuous integration and continuous deployment. You can see some of those questions that are placed there. So do you have a slow deployment process? With continuous deployment, it really addresses that because it increases the frequency of which software is deployed. Because in this model, you're really deploying almost every day. You're not waiting on these 3-month, 6-month, 9-month long historical waterfall cycles to deploy your code. And then another thing is people want to know, they want to get feedback quickly. So when you see the last one there, lack of continuous feedback. Oftentimes, companies started getting feedback from the wrong person, meaning the customer. With the rise of Twitter over the years, it has given the common customer a platform to complain about your product. And so I attribute Twitter to the rise of quality assurance and focus of quality assurance on companies. Because many years ago, when I started out in quality assurance, people would always push things in production and say, hey, the customer deal with it and we'll fix it over time. Now, if you do that, they're going to get on Twitter. And if there's 20 or 30 people experiencing that, next thing you know, you're trending out there on Twitter. Before you know it, you're on the Wall Street Journal, on the various news outlets, and then you have bad PR. And so this continuous integration and continuous deployment methodology that we kind of operate on is key to contain bugs, quality assurance, and all of those things that lends to having a seamless experience for your customers. Now, when we move into the next slide here, this is what we're using to enable our shift to the left platform. So I'm going to let Ken kind of talk about the highlights of their analytics, but this is one of the key drivers of our platform is actually the Sauce Lab Test Analytics that we integrate through their REST APIs.
Yeah, that's a great point, Will. There's briefly, there's three main modules in the Test Analytics platform. The first one is Test Trends that shows you testing across your organization. So it shows you how many tests have been run over time, gives you an idea of parallelization of your tests so you can know how efficiently you're testing. If your tests are running sequential, you're not really taking full advantage of automation until you're running them in parallel, at which phase you can get an idea of whether your parallelization is 100% or 50% or 70% during that process. Test History is a module that we use to identify flaky tests. So it does a scatter plot of the time a single test takes to execute over time. And say there's a test like a login script that you run, every day, you can then look at the results of that test and see, does that test take the same amount of time to execute day after day, or is there variation in the time that it takes for that test to execute? That variation and the failures that happen, say, randomly, are good indications that a test is flaky, and we have additional tools like extended debugging that can go out and gather HAR files and the network information to help you troubleshoot very quickly where that test flake might be coming from. And finally, Test Overview is a module that that helps you pinpoint what to fix first. If you're running hundreds of thousands of tests a day, like many of our larger customers are, you're getting probably maybe tens to a few thousand tests that are failing or coming in questionable. This test overview page helps you identify very quickly the browser operating system combinations that seem to be failing most frequently. That helps you then prioritize your work going forward. And again, all this data is available through the REST API that we include with our analytics platform, so that you can extract this data into your quality dashboards, or do exactly what Will and Omni Sourcing are doing here, extracting the analytics data and combining it with defect data to paint a broader, more interesting picture of how quality is being run in an organization. And just as an aside, both Walmart and Capital One use that API, and they extract that data into their open source test management platforms. We'll be talking in a future webinar with Walmart about Test Armada, which is their big test management platform. And you can look online for Hygieia, which is the Capital One platform as well. With that, I'll turn it back to you, Will.
Okay, so that's a great point in how companies are using, the test analytics, how we're using it, and kind of one of the big things, people have all of this data flowing through Sauce Lab, as well as all of this data flowing through defect management systems and various test management systems. And you wonder, what can I do with this data? And so in there, we have various scorecards that we produce out there. And so what we're displaying right now is kind of a business unit analytics scorecard. So what does that mean? And most organizations, they have various units where it could be the mobile division, it could be the internal division that customers are actually, their employees are using platforms. And so in there, you want to measure what is that division doing across the SDLC. So for sake of demonstration here at the top, that particular business unit VP, and you look at the requirements is red, and you see two arrows that basically that are flat. What that means is they are above their normal threshold of where they should be in requirements, but also over from the previous release, they haven't made any improvement. So if they had made any improvement or the improvement actually digressed, that arrow would change. So like what you see in the design area there, that arrow is pointing down. And so actually in there, the actual defects went down, but it didn't go down enough from the previous release to turn it either yellow or green in that manner. Then when you move over and look at the environment, it's kind of the opposite. It's an area of improvement, but the overall number of defects went up. So probably if we look at the previous release, they probably were green in that area. And then now they had more defects in that area, so it went up. And what could be an environment defect? Various things happens with environment. It could actually be a bad configuration. And so you have testers out there that's running end-to-end tests. They think the environment is stable, ready to go. They get 25 steps in, and it doesn't behave the way they think. They go and start doing triaging on that defect, and they found out that the environment is pointing to the wrong database or pointing to the wrong lab. And in there, you just basically cannibalize all of their hard work in testing. And so in there, there's always a cost associated with these type of defects, or really any defects. What you see over the right here is kind of what that cost is incurred for that particular business unit for that particular release. And so for this one, you see it was pretty high, it was $5 million. Now that number right there is derived for each customer uniquely, because there's different cost factors that go into defects for each organization. So all of these type things are configurable and tailored to each client. Now when we move to the next dashboard, this is when you want to get a little bit more granular and start drilling into what a particular application may be doing, or what a particular browser may be doing, or what a particular device may be doing. And so in here, you can see some of the big KPIs, or some of the common KPIs that people track. One is defect density. How many defects am I producing over the number of test cases that I'm running? And then defect turnaround time. When I do find a defect, how fast is development giving that back to me? Because if that number gets too high, that's going to slow up when it gets to market, when the project is over, and then also it could impede if they didn't fix it properly. How fast do you get it back in a retest fail? Because let's be honest, every time development fixes a defect, it doesn't always get fixed in the right manner. So sometimes they have to go through 2 or 3 iterations. And if they do that, then that's a whole nother area of opportunity in order to drive quality around your whole requirement development process to get that right. Because if they are constantly producing a defect on the same feature, something is off. They shouldn't be doing that. And then the next one is defect root cause analysis. That's the big key because everything that we do in our shift to left methodology is centered around having the right root cause. If you do not put the right root cause in after the solution is developed, you're really pointing the finger at somebody else instead of where that should be. For example, if anybody that's on the phone I know that's doing testing, oftentimes it's very easy to point the finger at the environment and the data, but really when you drill into it, it really wasn't that. It was actually a requirement issue. And then this is also imperative when you have many different vendors in your organization, because some vendors within their contract, they have these SLAs that they only should be producing X amount of defects. The quality should be of a certain percentage. And so oftentimes what you'll see is if different vendors are operating on a certain application and they are being measured by the application, they will oftentimes categorize that root cause something other than coding, because within their contract, if they produce X amount of coding defects, they have to pay the client back, either the customer back, a certain percentage of that billable rate. Now, of course, no firm out there is doing that, but I'm kind of being facetious. But in there, that's one of the kind of behavior KPIs that we track and monitor. Now, there are many different KPIs out there that people want to monitor. This is just a small subset of showing how we pull that data together. So everything that we've shown you now is kind of a high level of how we approach shift to the left overall, what we do with some of the data that comes from the source analytics as well as from the defect management system, that we bring all of this information together. And so with that, we're going to move into something that's a little bit more interesting, kind of just give you a preview of our platform in real time. And so we're going to shift to a live demo here to show you our shift left analytics platform. And as you can see at the top, we are powered by Sauce Labs in here. Let me give you kind of a visual pictorial in your mind of how this thing is put together. So we store and manage this all from our Omni Cloud. It's behind a secure VPN. In there, we integrate real time with Sauce Labs analytics, and then we also integrate with the defect management system. We bring all that data together to produce various dashboards. We're going to go through some of our kind of key dashboards that we start with. Just rest assured that these dashboards can be configured in many different fashions. It all depends on what KPIs that the client wants to see, but the main key KPI that we're tracking is defects and the root cause of that defect. What our platform is equivalent to an individual going and seeing their doctor. You go see your doctor and they're going to run a series of tests. When they run that series of tests, they're going to come back and say either you have high blood pressure, diabetes, cholesterol, and all of that. That's the exact same thing that we do with your defect data. When we go and pull it all in, we go back and analyze it and say, all right, you're constantly having issues with your requirements, or you're constantly having issues with your environment. But once you do that, you see what the issue is, but where the real work comes in is how do you fix that? What is the medicine? What is the prescription? So what we do is use our platform as to identify what those issues are, and then we work with the client on what that prescription is the care and management of that prescription, meaning the process, and how do you work through that process over time so you don't have defects in requirements, data, environment, so on and so forth. The only place you really should be seeing defects is really in your coding area. So with that, we're going to start showing you how we have this configured. It's a role-based platform. We're going to go through about 3 different layers. We're going to look at what a tester sees, then we're going to look at kind of what a manager sees, and then we'll highlight what a VP would look like. So with that, we're going to begin the live demo and go through it.
Hey, this is Ramya. I'm a developer at Omni Sourcing. So let's start and see how a tester dashboard looks like. Once the tester logins to the Omni Shift Left Analytics platform, he will be having access to 2 dashboards, which are Test Analytics and Defect Analytics. In Test Analytics, he will be seeing all the runs he has ran in the Source Lab environment. So this is how the dashboard looks like. So based on time and test runs, you can define the database, the dashboards like this. So if you want to see based on days or months or weeks, you can drill down based on the filters here. So this dashboard is completely interactive dashboard. So if you want to see for last few, say suppose 10 days, you just need to see last 10 and just choose days. So here you will be seeing how many runs have been ran in last 10 days. So there are 157 runs. For test phase is UAT, and you can also see the sub accounts from the main account of a source lab. So who ran these 157 runs? There are 3 owners in it. And also you can drill down based on the OS. Either it might be iOS like Mac or Windows or Linux based. And also you can drill down browser and their version. So each browser will be having like n number of versions in it. So if you want to drill down based on Firefox, you will be having an area where you can choose the versions also. So here you can see for Firefox there are 12 runs and there are 2 failures. And these 2 failures were observed on July 30th. So this is how particularly you will drill down all your dashboard which you have run throughout the time, how much ever you want to see. And the one catchy here it is, you will be having access to the historical data, which is 1 month plus. So you can have, in our cloud, we'll be storing the data and you can pull them whenever you want, and you can drill down based on the days, months and weeks, as I said. So if you just click it back, you will be taken back to the original dashboard. So let's go and see defect analytics. Now you have a test analytics. Okay, you have so many tests ran between these months. So now you want to see what are the defects you have been observed in these tests. So out of 2037 runs, there are 323 defects. So if you can see here the severity level of defects, their status currently assigned, and also the test phases it is running on. So for suppose if you want to drill down to the severity level 1, which is like high alert, let's go and see. So you have 106 in severity level 1 and maximum in the test phase of end-to-end test phase. And most of them are cancelled, which are 33. Some of them are closed and some of them are retest complete, as in you have defect, it is not assigned to the right place and the defect is been reassigned and the retest has been completed. So this is how you drill down your dashboard for the defect analytics out of how many ever defects you want. You can also drill down based on the phases. So if you don't want to see based on the severity, okay, let's go and see based on the test phases. Let's go see as the integrated system is the highest. We'll see how many have been there. So now you can see 165 are integrated system testing defects. Out of them, there are 11% in severity 1, 10% in severity 2 and 29% in severity 3. Maybe the other way around, I'm sorry. So it is 10% in severity 3 and 29% in severity 2. So this is how you drill down the defects and analyze the defects, what's the current status of the defects. So these are the two dashboards which the testers will be having access to. Now let's see how the manager's dashboards look like.
So in here, you will see kind of the manager view. So of course, the manager has the view that the testers was running as well, that we just walked through, the test analytics, the defects analytics. But a manager kind of want to get more into the thinking role of what is going on, kind of release over release, what is the costing me, or what's my cost of quality. And so here, we're going to highlight the root cause analytics dashboard and the defect comparison analytics dashboard.
So the root cause analytics dashboard gives us a clear picture of the category-based defects and the impacted cost on those categories based on the defects. You can also have an option to drill down based on the test as well, testing phases. And this table gives you a complete information of those defects, the job IDs from the source, and the summary behind the defect, was the reason behind the defect given by the tester, or so on and so forth. So, and the root cause category and the reason behind the root cause category. So let's check for, say, suppose requirements. You just need to click on there and you will be seeing it have a impact cost of 67,000. And you will be having all those defects listed here, and you can pull the information or what's the reason behind these defects in this table. And now you have the requirements seen in here and drilled down based on the requirements. If you want to see the cost impacted based on testing phase, let's see the integrated system testing. For integrated system testing, there are a number of defects based on each category and their impact cost based on each category. And this gives you a total cost of integration system overall testing in all the categories. And here you also, as I said, here will be the list of all the defects and their information. This is how you drill down the defect cost analytics. Okay, now this is a defect cost analytics based on overall history. So if you want to drill down based on release, how do you want to see? Like for suppose in 2016 how it's showing and in 2017 how it's showing. We have a defect comparison analytics dashboard here which shows a defect and the impacted cost for the root cause categories based on the release. You can compare two releases at time. So for suppose I want to see for 2016 Q1. I will choose that here and this populates the 2016 Q1 results, and I want to compare it with 2017 Q1 and see how the defects being changed. And boom, there you go. So it's total of 115 defects in Q1 2016 and 53 defects in Q1 2017. It's like almost 50% lower than that. Even the impact cost being lower. So here where is a catch it now? Okay, wow, I got my errors reduced. So if you have using this Omni Sourcing shift left tool, you can drill down way ahead instead of going quarter-based release, and you can see the issue and fix it right away, and you'll be having the reduced defects in the next quarter. So if you want to go back, just uncheck them. It will take back to your original dashboard. So this is how the manager. These are the 4 dashboards which the manager will be having access to. Now let's check how a VP level person can have an access.
So in here, so a VP usually, they're not really so much concerned about the details, but they want to know what are the details costing us and how are we getting better and how are my application, how are my vendors are performing. So Here we have 3 dashboards that we tailored for the VP. One is defect comparison analytics that we just walked through, because usually they want to see how we are performing in certain areas over time, release over release, year over year. And I want to resonate a little bit on that is because one of the things with us constantly pulling the data from Sauce Labs, we're storing it. So even when that data is gone out of Sauce Labs, we have already captured it in our historical database and be able to run trends over time to help organizations make strategic decisions on how they need to change in certain areas. So for here, we're going to highlight the vendor analytics and the application analytics dashboard.
So the vendor analytics dashboard will be giving you the information of the defects and the impacted cost based on each vendor. So, okay, I have my VP, I want to see how my clients are performing. So based on the year, if you want to see a perform, and we also have a different thresholds for each category of SDLC cycle. You can customize this, however, based on the organization, we can change it as per and so. And as we have already gone through our slide earlier, if you have a green, okay, you're good. And if you're in a yellow, you're approaching to your alert zone. So you just need to take care of that. And when you're in red, you need to stop it right away and need to dig back, shift left, and see what's the issue and where it is causing. So let's see how the vendors are performing now. So let's see how the Group A performs. Group A is so on good, a little yellow where he is approaching, where he can check on and keep sure that everything is going fine. And let's see Group B client how he's working. Now he is working really bad on coding area for 2017. So where he will stop right there, shift left, and check what's the issue and in which category the defect distribution in defects. Go again into our root cause and check the information where the issue is and stop it and reach that particular team so that it can be fixed right away instead of moving ahead into testing and deployment in the SDLC cycle, where he can save, like, say suppose 106,000. Let's see if any of them are performing really good. There you go. So the Group D is performing really good. So this is how a VP will come to know how his clients have been, how the organizations are performing. So now you know how the organizations are performing. Let's see how each applications are performing. So this is same like a vendor dashboard, looks everything similar, but the only difference where you'll be having a drill down based on applications. So Group A, Group B, Group C, you have seen for the vendors, you have so and so information. Okay, now let's drill down into application level. If you want to see for the application A is performing really good. Let's see application B. Application B is showing there like a Group B showed earlier. So it is clear that Group B vendor has the application B, where he have an issue in here and he will shift left and check in that application, which will help in a really better manner instead of drilling into thousands of applications. Similarly, like say suppose let's go to P, application P. So application P is approaching to an alert zone in the testing phase. Here he will be alert here itself and shift left a bit and see in coding, design, or requirement phase where the issue being stored. And you will be having the impacted cost popped up here. So it will be helpful for the VP level to see how it is affecting his organization. So these are the 3 dashboards which the VP will be having access to. And this is how our Omni Shift Left platform, Shift Left Analytics platform looks like.
So we just kind of walked through a small sample of what we can do with our platform to kind of get your ideas of what we can do with the Sauce Lab data, what we can do at Omni. But as I mentioned before, the key thing on that is how do you drive the behaviors and the change? And so as you work through driving the behaviors and the change, that is where the big piece that organizations really oftentimes miss the mark is because they don't take the right actions on doing those changes. And so in there, if you want to look at what are some of the benefits of our platform, and we've kind of highlighted them along the way, but I want to do a recap. One, we're measuring the software development lifecycle quality. We have historical execution data from Sauce Labs 1 month and beyond. We keep kind of highlighting that point because of how Sauce Lab Analytics work. They have millions and millions of records, so it's not feasible for them to store data over time for each of their customers. That data store would get massive. The next component is quality assurance governance. With everything that we're tracking and how we're looking at it, it helps govern the overall quality assurance for the SDLC as well as the individual code that's being developed. You can use it as a vendor management enabler. As you're tracking vendors and different teams, oftentimes you can use that for negotiations back with the contracts to state, hey, we've been watching your quality over time. We don't think we're getting the right value from your organization. How can we improve that? And that can have some interactive conversations with your vendors to improve what they're doing for you. Cost of quality tracking. Oftentimes, people really don't track what the cost of quality is, but now, with everything being DevOps, CI/CD, you're really going to need to track it because that cost is going to be rising very rapidly in the new methodologies. The way we have it developed is really methodology agnostic. It doesn't matter whether you are on the old waterfall or you're on some of the new DevOps. We can apply a platform to any of those type of methodologies. And then the last one is the KPIs for strategic decisions. So when you're looking at all this data and you want to start changing your organization, you can use this data to make those strategic decisions. You may have a particular manager or a tester that's performing better than others. And so in there, you have this high profile project that is very critical. And with this data, you can say, all right, I'm going to put Bob as the manager on it. I'm going to put Will as the tester on it because over time, these guys have been catching 90% of their defects. When the projects come through their pipeline, they usually go out seamless. And so that can help you make those strategic decisions to be more successful. And so that kind of concludes what we wanted to highlight today for our shift left analytics platform, and also give you a brief introduction in Omni Sourcing. We're a strategic partner with Sauce Labs. So in there, we will be working with them as well as their clients to provide this platform. It's ready to go today. So any client that want to sign up, there'll be information in the end of this presentation that you can actually kind of look at. And so from there, we're going to open it up to the Q&A.
Thanks, Will. Yeah, that was really, you painted a great picture of how companies that have moved to automated testing can start mining that data to generate the information that execs need to make these kinds of strategic decisions. I think that's fantastic. You say it's a platform. Can you maybe shed a little light of if someone has this kind of data available in the back end, say their defect database, just like a 1 month project or a couple week project, or what's the scope of the project to come in and deploy this thing for a user?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the way we run it right now is as a service. And so to be effective, we can get engaged very quickly within, 1 month. But in order to get down to what your symptoms are, it's probably 3 to 6 months because we got to go in and look at your defect data. And first thing up front is, are you putting the right root cause category? Because if that is off, everything that we do is going to be skewed and you're going to be taking actions on areas that really is not the problem. So depending on how much data you have from a defect perspective and how much source data you have and how it's kind of already interwoven, it'll take us some time to go through that. But in 3 months, you should be able to yield some great results, some symptoms of your organization, and give you a high-level prescription of what you need to do to solve that.
That's great, Will. And I know a lot of people probably aren't, doing fully 100% automated testing, right? They're doing some percentage of testing is manual, and they probably have some records that probably aren't as detailed. How do you recommend they kind of get started to move, from semi-manual to more automated testing, and how can they start collecting and using this data?
Great point. And so the way we have our platform developed, of course, we are integrated with Sauce Labs and everything that's happening in that platform. But as you mentioned, most organizations have other application and other initiatives happening within their organization. And so our platform really encompasses all things that's happening with the organization, and the Sauce Lab analytics is just one slice of the overall pie that we actually consume to really look at what's happening in the different areas, from requirements, environment, coding, so on and so forth. So if someone really want to switch from kind of the manual, tedious task, one thing I would suggest is everything that's mobile and you want to test it extensively, look at migrating everything from Selenium over to the Sauce Lab platform, where you can have unlimited scalability. All of those other areas in there that you're doing manual testing in, that is not browser-based and so on and so forth, there's other tools out there that you can leverage to do that testing. And then from there, make sure all of your defects are going in a centralized defect management system. Now for us, because we have the capabilities to plug in the many systems, we can aggregate that data for you all the way into our platform. But where you have synergies of defect is really better, because oftentimes we see in organizations that are not operating in a cohesive manner, they're opening duplicate defects in different areas, and you got 4 different teams chasing and fixing the same thing, which that in itself is driving up quality. And so that's some of the things that we've seen when we start analyzing defect data. When I mentioned about what's the quality of your defect root cause, we've noticed when we go through some defect data where there are 4 defects identified for the exact same thing on the exact same application, but it was identified by 4 different people or 4 different teams, and they wasn't aware that there was a defect already existing for that issue.
Yeah, and that just highlights kind of how as you move to the whole process of continuous integration, continuous delivery, you've got to increase that communication between the devs and the QA department. And as they get closer and closer together, that communication has to get better so they can operate and move much more quickly. Hey, Will, thanks so much for doing this for us. I found this fascinating. I think the integration you've done with our test analytics has really been able to surface a lot of great detail that I think execs, managers, and even developers can use as they go through and do their testing. On behalf of Will, Ramya, and myself and Sauce Labs, thanks everyone for attending today's webinar. Again, this has been recorded, and we'll be sending out a link to the webinar recording and slides very shortly. Everyone have a great day.